FLCL, which for those who are acquainted with anime history is somewhat of an iconic piece. It's basically, in a nutshell, a very short, very artistic, quirky, 6-episode long anime, which is, yeah, very artistic. It's out there, far afield, and full of baseball metaphors and lots of symbolism. The whole thing essentially is a giant convoluted allegory for puberty and growing up, and therefore has giant phallic symbols protruding from our main protagonist's forehead, along with giant robot battles and a bunch of troubled youths trying to cope with growing up. And it's about as weird and convoluted as it sounds, but a great show with, in the realms of anime, a famous soundtrack, which we are about to review here. A soundtrack I love with a burning passion.
And I appreciate it as well.
I'm not feeling the burning. So we actually just had a conversation about this. I gave it a 5 for originality. Now, as a general disclaimer, I love the soundtrack. I think is the bee's knees. And partly the reason why is, especially for an anime, but just to show soundtrack in general, it's very unorthodox. You just have this band coming together, you know, like you said, writing songs about, you know, weird existential puberty, which they did weirdly well. And yeah, I think it's just this weird sort of, what you call it, punk rock, you know.
It's punk rock, it's punk, it's a merging of genres.
Yeah.
It's punk and soft rock together, but then at the same time, not only that, but they masterfully used minor chords under the disguise of the sort of rock. You know, rock usually makes you feel really uplifted, but there's so many minor chords in there, it kind of plays really closely to the sadness of growing up.
So for originality, I think it's its own thing with its own really unique vibe. So I gave it a 5, and
I give it a 4 out of 5, and that sounds bad because it's one of the best soundtracks ever. But the reason I gave it a 4 out of 5 is because you're shaking your head.
I am.
The only reason I gave it a 4 out of 5 is because, you know, I think there are a lot of similar tracks on the 3-disc collection, which is fine. It's very original. It's great, but I'm one to really like variety, kind of. Even though this is the theme, I didn't feel like there was enough diversity within the theme, but the theme itself was wonderful.
Alright, so now we have production value. I'll start just because I don't have the most interesting scoring here, mostly because I just gave it a 4, just because otherwise my score will be way too terribly high, and I can't give this soundtrack a perfect score, though I still love it. So I'm just giving it a 4, just for purely artificial reasons. Okay, Jordan, say more interesting things.
I gave the production value a 5 out of 5, actually, and it's because the rhythms come out very clearly. One thing with the soft rock punk genre that's really important is getting the rhythm across to allow the audience to feel the kind of emotions, the vibe that they're trying to portray to the audience. So having felt that, I thought that the production value was really great. They must have had the right microphones. They were in a room with really good acoustics.
So the next category is compatibility. So I give it a 5. This soundtrack melds so well with the show. For those of you who have seen it, it's essentially like a 6-episode long AMV. I mean, everything that happens syncs up so perfectly, not in terms of only action, but in terms of emotional content and effect. With the show itself, they'll do such effects as playing the soundtrack, then muting it all of a sudden, or really syncing up to the character's actions. The way that the show mingles and interacts and flirts daringly with the soundtrack is just fantastic, and they work so well together. If there was a show to give a 5 in this category to, it would be FLCL.
I wholeheartedly agree. That was, I don't even think I could say it any better. It's a perfect marriage between music and medium.
Alright.
On to emotional value.
Yep. So I guess I'll start again. So I gave this a 5. And I was actually having this conversation with Jordan. At first, he was like, you know, there's not really sadness in there. There's a lot of songs that are action-packed, invigorating, very high-octane like the show itself. But then, we got to thinking, I've always found it highly emotionally impacting, and one of the reasons is it's sort of subtle about the way it does it. There's no song that's overtly upsetting. You have some that are a little more, you know, lower tempo than the others, but in this very subtle way, it inserts sadness into the songs, makes you feel things in a very unorthodox manner. So for me, it covers the whole spectrum of emotion in a very weird way, and for that, I have to give it a 5. I mean, just such, yeah, weird sensations I get when I listen to this. Yeah, 5 for me. And for you?
The biggest thing that I learned from the soundtrack, and when you can learn from the soundtrack, I find that to be fascinating. Because the soundtrack, like I said earlier, the soundtrack itself tells a story. And the story that I found most exciting from the soundtrack is that I realized that we don't know where we're going in this life, but we'll find out by living. That is my emotion. Those are my emotions to do with the soundtrack. That was cheesy. Moving on.
It was cheesy, though that's the thing. Like, the soundtrack, it actually gets you thinking. Like, there's this weird, it just somehow imitates real life so well. There's something about it I can't even explain. The reason we're so tongue-tied is you can't do it justice with words. There's just something about the soundtrack.
You just have to listen to it.
You have to listen to it.
It's otherworldly, I would say.
Agreed.
I mean, it's not like, well, pop music isn't really great. Okay, now we're on to replayability, and my sort of review on this section is, I would say that it really depends on your taste. If you're really into rock and sort of the otherworldly kind of psychologically stimulating soundtrack that teaches you things without saying anything, then this soundtrack is definitely for you. Personally, I'm more into like the orchestra side of soundtracks, so I wouldn't necessarily listen to this all the time. So that's why I gave it a 4 out of 5. But this is not to say this is not highly replayable. I didn't personally find a track that I can replay over and over and over again, but I loved it, and it's original. It's fantastic. So I think it could really work for someone. But I'll give it a 4 out of 5. What do you think, Max?
I had to give it a 5 out of 5, once again, because of personal preference. I listen to this all the time as I'm writing. I find it just really helps me get in the mindset to write characters, especially since I'm trying my hand in a young adult novel, and I figure if I'm going to enter the psyches of brooding adolescents, what better way than the FLCL soundtrack? So I've been binging this lately, so for me, an obligatory 5 out of 5. For me, it all averages out to a 4.8.
And I gave it a 4.6.
So if you meld those together, a 4.7. So
quite high score. If you look at our other videos, there are no soundtracks that come close to this.
7 for me.
4.7.
Amazing soundtrack. There we go. All right. Thanks for watching, YouTube.
Please like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. We're so thankful for our 7 subscribers currently.
We love you guys and gals.
And we love all of you guys who watch it, but our subscribers hold a special place in our heart, so please subscribe.